Chalo. So last time what we were talking about was liver function test. Now for you to understand a liver function test, you need to understand what is liver, at least some basics of liver, and what is the main marker of liver. That is why you need to understand what is jaundice. Alright, jaundice is not exactly a disease as such. It is a very complex and complicated symptom of liver damage. Okay, because of several factors, there can be the several types of liver. Yes, Ripati, you have a doubt? You can put it in the chat box as well if you have a doubt. You raised your hand, so all right. So now, as I was telling about jaundice, now any type of damage to liver will generally eventually present as jaundice for the first time. If you have a patient who has some kind of damage to the liver, it will be shown as jaundice. All right, the patient will first suffer from jaundice, then the consequent symptoms will come into picture. Now, before we get into this, first we'll look at what happens or what is the normal function of liver. One second. So I hope you can see this. If you cannot, please comment in the chat box. If you're not able to hear anything, do comment in the chat box. All right. One second. Right. Now, coming to the functions of liver, here we'll be considering some of the most important metabolic functions specifically of liver. Right. Now, there is the detox function of liver where it break down your what do you call alcohol, medications. It will break down any toxic substances that you take in. It will also break down other macromolecules that you ingest, such as food, basically. Right, your carbohydrates, proteins, fats, all of those are broken down at some point by your liver. Right. Other than that, it will destroy your old RBCs that are about to die. Right, that is a relatively important function of liver. It will also help spleen in doing the same. Right. Other than that, as I told you, it will process nutrients wherein it will help in digestion of the food that you take in. Right. Other than that, it will regulate blood composition. How it does so is by regulating the factors. Now I'm not sure if liver has been covered for you or not, but one important function of liver is secreting clotting factors and some important proteins as well. Now those will help in regulating blood composition. Right, if your clotting factors are not present properly, you will have a bleeding problem, in the sense that clotting is important for your body. If there is any type of injury in general, you should have a good clotting time or good prothrombin time, in the sense that if god forbid at some point of time you do have some injury, if you do not have the blood components required for clotting, you will bleed out before your body can close the wound. Okay, that is a very big problem. So that is why generally blood thinners are the ones that work exactly opposite to clotting, if you can understand and correlate. Right, people who generally have cardiovascular diseases, they are given blood thinners because they have a clotting problem, in the sense that they have a lot of clotting going on. So you give blood thinners where you are trying to decrease the amount of clotting that occurs. Normally clotting proteins should be present in your body. Right, there are several types of clotting proteins, 1 2 3 6 9 and 10, I think, are the ones that are secreted by our liver. Please go and reference once again, just in case. I'm not going to the details of liver. Anyway, there are clotting proteins that are secreted by your liver. Right. Also, these are heavily dependent on vitamin K. Another important function of your liver will be production of bile. Right, bile is a excretory product that your liver is trying to throw out of your body. Right. Now, other than these, it will also help in production of certain very specific proteins, and as well as cholesterol. Cholesterol is important for your body. See, though high amounts of cholesterol is bad, cholesterol in general is required by your body, because most of your uh, let's say androgynous hormones and several hormones take their origin from cholesterol, meaning they are formed using cholesterol. If you do not have enough amount of cholesterol, for example, if I talk about testosterone and estrogen, right, or estradiol, both of them have their origin from cholesterol, meaning I need cholesterol to make testosterone or estrogen, estradiol. So if a person who has very low amount of cholesterol because of whatever reason, the correlate if you correlate that with the level of testosterone, obviously if your cholesterol level falls, so will your testosterone and estrogen level. All right, so those are some of the important functions of liver. I hope you understood that. If you did not, please do let me know. All right, taking that as a yes. You need to either speak up or you need to put it in the chat. Okay, either way I will not be able to see your face and gauge whether you understood it or not. You have to speak out. All right, coming to jaundice. All right, the other day I was showing you a video of jaundice. Hold on. Right, let me, yeah. Now what is jaundice? I'll mute the audio. Now I do know that you guys are not able to hear the audio, so I will be talking on behalf of the video. Yes, you did not understand. Okay. See, what I told was the functions of liver. Now, hold on. Where is it? Screen share. Right. Now, if you can see this, now generally speaking, liver has some important functions. Okay. We specifically will be concerned with the metabolic functions, at least with respect to this chapter, but there are other functions of liver as well. Right. Some of the most important functions of liver will include detoxification. It will what do you call, detoxify all the toxins that you ingest. It can be in any form. Even drugs can be toxins in a way. All right, so that will be the detox function of the liver. Other than that, there will be metabolic function of the liver, where it is metabolizing lipids, proteins, carbohydrates. So it is breaking them down for further usage by your body. That is what the liver does. All right, if you consume carbohydrates, normally when you consume food, you didn't do need to break it down before you can use it, right? Before it can be converted into ATP. Now your body does not understand what is carbohydrate, protein, this and all. It will understand energy in the terms of ATP. So your liver is helping carbohydrates, proteins, and livers being converted into ATP, right? That is one intermediary function that your liver does, right? Which is quite important actually. If you're not able to break it down so that your, if you remember in cell we studied that your mitochondria will take glucose and some other proteins and it will form ATP. All right, I'm hoping this is basic from your intermediate as well. Your mitochondria performs glycolysis and other metabolic functions required for the formation of ATP. Right. To do this, you need nutrients from which you get from food. Now, you cannot just shove food into your mitochondria. You need to break it down into particles which can be usable by your mitochondria. That function is done by liver. All right, that is the metabolic function of liver. Then there will be excretory function of liver, where it is excreting, or in the sense producing bile, bile pigments, bile salts, cholesterol. It will also produce proteins, right? Especially what you call proteins that are responsible for what you call clotting. Clotting proteins. There are a number of clotting proteins that are produced by liver, right? Especially vitamin K derived, which is very important for clotting time. Right? Clotting time is basically the time taken by your body to clot once injury occurs. All right, if you have some kind of a cut or nick, internal or external, after a few seconds automatically blood will clot and bleeding stops, right? Obviously it depends on the amount, what you call, severity of the wound as well, but generally if you're a healthy individual, clotting time will be somewhere between what you call 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, right? If it's a small wound, even less, maybe 10 to 11 seconds, less than that. Generally it is less than 1 minute for an average wound. But if someone has a problem in clotting proteins, their liver is not working properly, and if they are not producing clotting proteins properly, obviously there are other clotting proteins that are produced by other means other than liver as well, but liver plays an important role in this, in the sense that if someone has liver damage, there is a very good chance that the person will have a problem in clotting, in the sense that if they have injuries, it will be very hard for them to heal from that injury, because blood will not clot at the spot of that injury, meaning you will have extensive blood loss even from a small cut or a nick, right? Let's suppose you get scratched, okay, and it's a deep enough scratch where you are slightly bleeding, or you're cutting something with a knife and you cut your nick your finger, right? For a normal person, it will clot within a minute, less than a minute generally, right, depending on how big the cut is. But for someone who is having liver damage, it might not be it might not be the case. So it'll take much more longer for such a person to what you call have the blood clotted and to stop the bleeding, right? Other than that, there is one function where your liver destroys old RBCs, right? So it will help your spleen in doing so as well. Now if you remember, spleen is called the graveyard of your RBCs, right? Now we discussed about the detox function as specifically the kapha cells, right? There's something called the kapha cells in your liver. If you have studied liver anatomy, then you will know. If you don't, then there is a specific type of cell called Kupfer cells, KUPFER. Okay, uh, those cells are phagocytes of your liver. They will phagocytose any toxic material from your what you call liver or your body. That is how your liver works as a detoxification agent. All right, especially in the case of ammonia. So if I present liver with ammonia, it will convert it into urea, which can be excreted through urine. All right, so it will basically convert products so that it can be thrown out of the body. That is one of the important functions of your liver. That is how also what you call your liver works as a detoxification agent, right? Then there is the storage function of liver, wherein your liver is responsible for, now I'm sure you know this, but liver stores glycogen. It will store vitamin B12, vitamin A, trace elements of iron. There are a few chemicals and proteins that the liver stores as well, so that will be the storage function of your liver. All right, so from this in general, you understand that there are several functions, metabolically important functions of the liver. Now why we are studying about the liver is for liver function test. When I talk about liver function tests, now I'm sure whenever you've gone to your clinical rounds, you must have seen something called LFT, a chart of LFT, right? For some patients, especially for patients who have cirrhosis or who are alcoholic and things like that, they will definitely have LFT. Doctor would like to see what is the condition of liver. To understand when something is wrong, and to understand what is how to diagnose something is wrong, you do need to know what is normal, right? If you do not know what are the normal functions of the liver, you will not be able to understand and interpret what LFT is, what is liver function test, how you gauge the functionality of the liver, right? So the first aspect is what is happening to the liver. Now more often than not, any damage to liver will be presented as jaundice. Okay, almost 90% of the time, if the patient has some or the other type of liver damage, it may be because of alcohol, it may be because of direct injury, it may be because of some poison they've ingested, one or the other way. It might be a secondary complication to a primary disease. Okay, generally, for example, there are viral diseases. Viral diseases generally tend to cause liver damage, all right, hepatocyte damage, especially malaria. If you remember the pathophysiology of malaria, you've studied it in your intermediate, right? I'm not sure whether you have or not, but malaria, Plasmodium vivax or Plasmodium species, generally they thrive in hepatocytes at one point of time, right, in their life cycle. So that clearly represents liver damage, which will be shown as jaundice, for which you need to understand what is jaundice, at least briefly what is jaundice and what happens, how is its relationship in comparison to a few pigments and proteins secreted by liver, like bile, urobilinogen, conjugated bile, unconjugated bile. What are those? All right, I hope that answered your doubt. Lovely. Okay, if any one of you else has any doubts as well, please do let me know. I'll try my best to clear it out. All right. Okay, I'll take that as yes, no one has doubts. So I'll proceed to jaundice. See, now I hope you guys can see this at least. Okay, please do let me know if you cannot see it as well. All right, all right. Now, generally, jaundice is something that will be presented in your skin and your eyes. Generally, what will happen is because of accumulation of bilirubin. I hope you guys can see this. Okay, do let me know if you cannot. Now, what is happening here? Bilirubin because of impaired metabolism of bilirubin, because of impaired excretion of bilirubin, what happens, it starts getting accumulated in your body, giving your skin the characteristic yellowish discoloration, and your eyes, sclera specifically, yellowish discoloration. I'm hoping you know what sclera is. All right. Now, generally what happens is sclera gets yellowed much quicker than your skin, specifically because of a protein called elastin present in your sclera. Your sclera has a protein called elastin that is responsible for the elasticity of your sclera, right? That is responsible for the integrity of your elastic fibers. Now, what happens is elastin, that particular protein, has affinity or a likeness towards bilirubin, meaning bilirubin and elastin are very good friends and they will join together very easily. Because of which, what happens is the person who is affected by jaundice will what you call, will present with yellow eyes much more quicker than they present with yellowish skin. All right. Eventually, you will also have yellowing of their nails and other parts as well, but generally it will start with the eyes. You will be able to see it with the eyes, right? So normally bilirubin, what happens is, if you do not have jaundice, whenever it undergoes metabolism, it will be converted into certain compounds and excreted through urine and feces, which give their characteristic yellow and brown color, right? That is how you get it. Now what is happening, hold on, I'll speed it up a little bit. Okay. Now, let's talk with respect to RBC. What happens? How does it start? How is bile getting accumulated, which is causing bilirubin accumulation is causing jaundice. Now, how is it getting accumulated? Let's start with an RBC. Now, when we talk about an RBC, the normal lifespan of an RBC is around 120 days, right? At 120 days, it becomes old and it is generally destroyed. So, what happens? How is the RBC destroyed? Whenever an old RBC around 120 days starts declining its function, what will happen is a macrophage. I am hoping you guys know what a macrophage is. It's a phagocytic cell. All right. A macrophage will come into picture and it will engulf this particular vertical RBC. What will happen in turn? This is part of the reticular endothelial system. Okay, the macrophage system. It's a part of your immunity. So what this macrophage does is it will break down that particular RBC into a heme component and globin component. Specifically, if you break down RBC, now you know that RBC has something which is very important called hemoglobin in its structure. Right, hemoglobin is the one that will have the porphyrin ring, which will carry oxygen for you, hence giving what you call this RBC its capacity to carry oxygen and give it to other parts of your body. Right, that is the main function of RBC. So if I break down RBC, I will definitely get hemoglobin. Hemoglobin itself is a protein which, if I break down, I will get two components: the heme component, which is the iron component, and the globin protein. All right, globin protein, which if it undergoes further breakdown, it will form amino acids. All right, if you have a protein and if you break down proteins, you generally get peptides and amino acids. Heme, on the other hand, what happens is if you break it down, you get two components. You will get iron and protoporphyrin. All right. Protoporphyrin is converted into unconjugated bilirubin right there in the macrophage. I'll repeat the whole cycle once more. All right. It is, yeah. If someone is not understanding, please do let me know in the chat box, or you have to speak it out. Okay. Else I will not know. Now, I'll repeat once again. What is happening is in jaundice, bilirubin is getting accumulated, right? That is why it is causing jaundice. That is the condition basically. How it happens is, let's come from a perspective of RBC. Now, whenever RBC gets old around 120 days, it is phagocytosed by something called your macrophage. Right? I hope you know what is macrophage. This is part of your reticular endothelial system, right? Or your macrophage system. What will happen is this RBC will engulf your this macrophage will engulf the old RBC and it will break the RBC down, and eventually it will come down to breaking down of hemoglobin. I hope you know what is hemoglobin. Now, when you break down hemoglobin in general, what will happen is you will get two particular components. You will get the globin, that is the protein component of hemoglobin, and you get the heme component. Right? Globin component, which is a protein, if you break it down further, now you know proteins are made up of peptides, peptides are made up of amino acids, right? So if you break down a protein, you will obviously get amino acids. On the other hand, if you have the heme component which is broken down, it will give you iron and protoporphyrin. All right, I hope you understood that. From protoporphyrin you get something called unconjugated bilirubin. Sir, is that video is playing or just paused because it is paused? Yeah, I paused it because what do you call? I was trying to catch you up to this point. If it keeps playing, I will not be able to. I have paused it. All right, but I'm playing it again. So we came up to what is unconjugated bilirubin. Now what happens to unconjugated bilirubin? Some protein called albumin, which is present in your blood. All right, you have several proteins in your blood. One important protein is albumin. Right, albumin acts as a transporter for unconjugated bilirubin. It is called unconjugated because it is water insoluble. It is highly lipid soluble. Now, if you want to throw it out of your body, you need to convert unconjugated bilirubin to conjugated form, wherein it is water soluble. See, I'll repeat again. Unconjugated bilirubin is water insoluble or lipid soluble. It is lipophilic and hydrophilic in the sense, right? If you want to throw it out of your body, you have to convert it into a hydrophilic form. Especially if you want to throw it out of your body through urine, you need to make it hydrophilic, right? You need to make it dissolve something that can dissolve in water, right? How that happens is through hepatocytes. Now what will happen is whenever your macrophage is having your unconjugated bilirubin, a protein in your blood, circulation protein called albumin, comes into picture. It will carry you what do you call your unconjugated bilirubin to a hepatocyte, to your liver, where you have your hepatocytes. Now what happens in a hepatocyte is unconjugated bilirubin is converted into a conjugated bilirubin, right? A lipophilic form, something which is what you call lipid loving, or something that can dissolve in lipids, that will be converted into a hydrophilic form. This is done using the what you call enzyme uridine glucuronidase transferase. Just remember it as UGT. For now you don't have details of jaundice. This is an overall picture so that you understand what is happening in jaundice. Okay, you don't need to remember each and every small detail, but it is nice to remember that there is an enzyme called uridine glucuronidase transferase that is responsible for the conversion of unconjugated bilirubin to conjugated bilirubin. Conjugated bilirubin is what they call water soluble. Now what will happen from here? Let's see. See, now what happens is, from this what you call hepatocyte, the conjugated bilirubin that is formed, it will go into your bile canaliculi. Now, if you have not covered liver in your anatomy physiology, then you will eventually learn about what are bile ducts and bile canaliculi. If you have already learned about it, then I don't need to explain it any further. All right. Conjugated bilirubin, what happens is, whatever conjugated bilirubin is formed in your hepatocyte, that will eventually what you call be transferred into your bile canaliculi. You have several bile canaliculi through which it will be going to your bile duct and finally be stored in your gallbladder. Okay, from here on out, what happens is, when you are eating something, here the example given is a donut. You might eat anything. Okay, now what happens is, when you eat something in your small intestine, when the broken down components of whatever you have eaten, let's suppose you have eaten an idli, okay, something, okay, uh, when you eat that, obviously once it goes through your GIT, it will be broken down into smaller components so that it can be absorbed. At one point, once it reaches the small intestine, this conjugated bilirubin comes into picture. It will go and interact with those broken down particles of food in your small intestine. All right, it will do so by moving through a common bile duct. So what happens in this scenario? यहाँ पर your conjugated bile is coming, your conjugated bilirubin is being secreted by your gallbladder. It is eventually ending up in your small intestine. Now, in your small intestine, there is something called intestinal microbes. Now, if you remember, your small intestine has something called intestinal flora, right? You must have read about it or heard about it at some point of time, obviously. So these microbes are good microbes, the good bacteria in your body, right? what these fellows will do is they will convert this conjugated bilirubin into urobilinogen. Okay. Yeah, now I hope you can see. I think it was a little bit small. Now conjugated bilirubin is converted into urobilinogen through your microbes. What will happen eventually is this urobilinogen will undergo spontaneous oxidation. In the same small intestine, immediately urobilinogen will be converted into something called urobilin. Okay? This urobilin will be what you call almost 80% of urobilin will be excreted through your body in the form of feces, giving your feces the characteristic brown color. Right? I'll repeat once again. From conjugated bilirubin, what is happening is from your hepatocyte, it is going to your bile canaliculi to your bile duct, then being stored in your gallbladder. From your gallbladder, what happens is whenever you eat something and the particles of whatever you have eaten, the food particles that enter your small intestine, these will interact. Whenever they come into picture, your gallbladder will secrete conjugated bilirubin. Conjugated bilirubin, once it comes into small intestine, it will be converted into a protein called urobilinogen through your microbes, your intestinal flora, intestinal microbes, right? When urobilinogen gets formed, it will undergo spontaneous oxidation, meaning as soon as it is formed, it will be converted, it will be oxidized. Alright, that is something called spontaneous oxidation. It is happening immediately, right? Spontaneously oxidizing that particular substance. Urobilinogen gets spontaneously oxidized into something called urobilin, right? Urobilin is the component that gives the characteristic brown color to your feces. Now 80% of urobilin is excreted as is through your what you call feces, but 20% will be absorbed back into your blood. See, see this urobilinogen, whatever is present, that will be recycled. Okay, it is not excreted, but it comes back into your blood. Now what will happen is in your blood, once it is entering your blood, eventually it will go, that urobilinogen, whatever 20% that you have absorbed, that enters your blood, 90% of that 20%. Now let's suppose you had 100 units of, this is only an example, okay, for you to understand, listen carefully. You had 100 units of conjugated bilirubin that was, I hope you can see this, from gallbladder. Whenever you have eaten something, let's suppose 100 units of conjugated bilirubin has been secreted and it is interacting with your particular intestinal microbes, meaning 100 units of conjugated bilirubin is converting into 100 units of urobilinogen. All right, out of 100 units of urobilinogen, most of them are undergoing spontaneous oxidation, forming urobilin, and urobilin, 80% of urobilin is being excreted out through feces. 20% of that, all right, out of 100 units, now if 80% has been excreted out, that is 80 units, 20% is remaining, meaning 20 units. Now those 20 units enter back into your blood, they are recycled back into your blood, right? Now you have 20 units of conjugated bilirubin in the form of urobilinogen, right? Out of those 20 units in your blood, almost 18 units, 90% of that 20, basically 18 units will go into your liver and 2 units will go to your kidney. Those 2 units that will represent the 10%. If you have 90% going into your liver, obviously the rest 10% that is remaining goes into your kidneys. Once it enters kidneys, this will give you the characteristic yellowish tinge of your urine. All right, that is how you get a slight yellowish tinge in your urine. This is what happens in what you call to bilirubin in general. All right, I hope you understood this part. All right, now coming to jaundice, what is happening? Jaundice is either, see, it can be in three forms. It can be prehepatic. Jaundice is happening because of a problem in either unconjugated bile or conjugated bile or both. All right, now your conjugated bile is called direct bilirubin, unconjugated bile is called indirect bilirubin. All right, total bilirubin is what you will see in your medical chart. All right, I'll repeat once again. Once you go to a hospital, let's suppose, and you open a patient's file, and if they have LFT in their diagnosis, okay, someone has, a doctor has prescribed LFT to them, and you're able to see the chart. In that chart, you'll be able to see what you call the value of bilirubin in the form of T bill, I bill, and D bill. All right, what is that? T bill represents total bilirubin, that is what do you call, direct bilirubin plus indirect bilirubin. Indirect bilirubin is your unconjugated bilirubin. They are the same. Okay, unconjugated bilirubin, the level of unconjugated bilirubin that is measured along with the amount of conjugated bilirubin will give you total bilirubin. So obviously unconjugated bilirubin will be the indirect bilirubin and conjugated bilirubin will be the direct bilirubin. Now whenever I have jaundice, there is a problem in either unconjugated bilirubin, meaning either that is getting stuck and it is getting accumulated, or conjugated bilirubin is getting what do you call, accumulated, or both of them are getting accumulated. In all of these three scenarios you will have jaundice. All right, I hope you understood that part. All right, if you did not understand, please do let me know. All right, so what is happening here? See, here he's giving an example where in your hepatocyte, let's suppose, now if you remember when we are talking about bilirubin, I told you in your hepatocyte, unconjugated bilirubin. Yeah, Alan, you have a doubt?
No, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
No, sir.
No, okay, you raised your hand, sir. Okay. See, so what is happening is, uh, whenever what they call your again coming back to your RBC is being broken down by a macrophage. It is being converted into unconjugated bilirubin, which is being sent to your hepatocyte. In your hepatocyte, this unconjugated bilirubin is being converted through UGT. I told you, uridine glucuronide transferase into conjugated bilirubin, which is the water soluble form. Now let's suppose there is some damage in your hepatocyte. Okay, because of whatever reason there is some damage in your hepatocyte to an extent that your UGT is not being formed properly, or this conversion is not occurring properly. So what will happen is your unconjugated bilirubin will start getting accumulated. It can be either case, either unconjugated bilirubin is getting accumulated, or maybe the damage is so that it's not happening in the enzyme, but the cell structure of hepatocyte is being damaged. In that condition, see, both of those scenarios are shown here. Here it is showing the conversion is not happening using the red X mark, and here it is showing a breakdown in the structure of the hepatocyte. If there is a breakdown in the structure of hepatocyte, even if unconjugated bilirubin is converted into conjugated form, that conjugated bilirubin will start what you call being secreted out of the hepatocyte. Instead of going into bile canaliculi, it will start going here and there. In a way, there is accumulation of conjugated bile. Now normally what is happening to conjugated bile is it is going to gallbladder through bile canaliculi and bile ducts, being excreted out. Almost 18-90% of it is being excreted out. A small percentage is left back in you. But if there is hepatic damage, this conjugated bilirubin cannot go into your bile canaliculi and will spread all around your liver. All right, it will go into circulation and that will create other problems. In both of these scenarios, what will happen is your serum bilirubin will go up. See, here it is showing conjugated and or unconjugated. So it can be conjugated or unconjugated, or what do you call, both of them together. All right. In either case, you will see increase in bilirubin, which is causing the yellowish tinge of your skin and eyes, which is your jaundice. This generally is seen when your total bilirubin goes over 2.5 mg per dl. Normally the amount of total bilirubin that you should have in a healthy patient is 1.2. All right, so this is a little more than double. If you have a lot of bilirubin in your blood, then you will start seeing the yellowish tinge of your skin and eyes. All right, this is how you will have jaundice. See here, here he clearly explains scleral tissue has something called elastin, a protein called elastin, which has affinity towards bilirubin. That is why your eye will get what you call, it will become yellow quicker than your skin. See, see, now when we are talking about jaundice, the classification of jaundice is based on what is high. Either conjugated bilirubin is high, or unconjugated bilirubin is high, or both of them are high. Based on that, you will classify jaundice. All right. See, what causes, acha, I'll explain it in this way, it will be easier for you to understand. Okay, I hope you understood what we discussed till now, at least what is happening, the fate of bile. in general, and what is occurring to what do you call, how jaundice is occurring, basically how unconjugated bile or conjugated bile affects your jaundice, right? If both of them are getting accumulated or either one of them are getting accumulated, it is causing jaundice. Now generally jaundice is classified into three types. All right, or should we continue it in the next lecture? We have 3 minutes in the lecture, that's it. Okay, I'll like continue it in the next lecture then. Please make sure you attend the class. Only like half of them were present initially at 10 o'clock and almost half of them came after 10:30. So please be on time. If you have any doubts about today's class, do let me know. I'll put this video on YouTube, and I'll link all the vertical whatever I've shown you in the video. All right, if it is an image or the video that I have shown you in general, I've linked to that so that you can see it later on for your reference. All right. None of you have any doubts, and we'll end the session.